Paula, thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you about living pain-free till the end is the way I'm languaging it. I don't know if that's how you're languaging it.
Well, wouldn't that, I mean, that would be the dream, right? People have different dreams. I saw a doctor recently on TikTok who said, people, you think about what regrets people have. And as a doctor, the regret that he hears the most is, oh, I wish I had started eating and moving better years ago
Yeah.
because I'm miserable now. And people don't realize how long 15, 20, 25 years of discomfort can be, right? So
Yes.
yeah, anything that you can do now to set yourself in motion to have a better day now and also be on track for still, I mean,
Mm.
accidents and illness can happen, but most of what I see is just the accumulated effects of
Mhm.
unhelpful habits practiced day after day for decades.
Right. Even a lot of us think we've got really good habits, and they're not as good as we think, right? Yeah. Well, I was just looking for how to introduce you, and I
Here we
I
are.
Paula is this beautiful person who's a genius at helping people with posture and movement and function, so that maybe a lot of us are going to be able to avoid medications and surgeries and things like that. And it's a really personal issue for me because I lived with pain starting from an accident in high school. It wasn't an accident. I was playing drums and they were too heavy for me and I didn't know how to carry them. So I created problems in my body. My body created solutions to the problem I was giving it. And yeah, the
And
doctors that
those
I first went,
solutions
yeah,
created other problems.
they just led me into more problems in a lot of ways. And I'm definitely not saying let's not go to doctors, but let's go to doctors like informed and as strong as possible. So we don't end up with surgeries we don't need and medications we don't need and other medications to treat the medications that are causing problems. So yeah, how do you,
Go to doctors as one contributing opinion, right? One contributing
yeah,
informed opinion. So doctors have wonderful diagnostic tools that I don't have access to.
right.
So I
Yeah,
love it when people have gone to the doctor and they said, oh, the doctor can't find anything wrong. I'm like, well, hooray. That means there's no
that's good.
damage, there's no tumor, right? Like
Right,
we're not going to make anything worse with movement. So
right.
I'm glad you got that all sorted out. But so then if the doctors can't see something with the x-rays, the MRI, whatever their test is, they tend to say, oh, well, nothing's wrong. Maybe it's in your head. But
Right.
I interviewed somebody recently who's an Ayurvedic
Mm.
chef and practitioner. And she says that in Ayurveda, I can't remember now, there are like 6 or 8 different levels at which they assess. And she said that Western medicine can only pick up when things are disrupted those last 2 levels. But the first
Oh,
like 4 to 6 levels where a traditional medicine practitioner would be saying, oh, things aren't quite right here. The Western doctors aren't noticing anything. So if you
mm.
can start
So
improving,
by the time we get to our doctors, things are bad lots of time. Like we
yes,
let things get really bad with certain habits.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I just wanted to address this, right? Because you mentioned people think they have healthy habits. And so one thing is, well, who says it's a healthy habit? Because
Right.
you might, you might pick up a lot of nutrition information that's actually
That's
misinformation. It's not good
terrible.
for you at all. And so you can say, well, but I've been eating healthy. I've been following all these guidelines. But in fact, those guidelines don't support your health.
Right.
And likewise with movement, you could be saying, oh, but I walk this many steps every day, or I
Yeah.
get my heart rate up to this much, or I do this many minutes every week of cardio. And who says that's actually what you need? And where
Mm.
I'm more interested in working with people is, well, what's the quality of your movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you walk an hour every day with poor form, I know lots of people that have exercised their way into chronic pain, right?
Into injury, right? Yes.
Are you creating new troubles for yourself with all that exercise? Or even are you doing exercises that just increase your cortisol levels
Mm.
and so further disrupt
Yeah.
rather than giving you a sense of, oh, yes, all my body parts are working together in harmony. I am,
Yeah.
I'm really moving around with some joy and delight here on the planet.
Oh, I love that. I love that phrase, joy and delight. Moving with joy and delight. I'm gonna put that one down.
Oh, good.
It reminds me of, yeah, I would get out of the habit of exercising and then I would get going again. I'd be excited and almost always would end up with some kind of injury and frustrated, like I'm doing my best. I see this with people with their eating too. I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to be doing and it keeps turning out worse than before. So frustrating. Yeah. I mean, so what ends up causing pain for most of us? Do you have a perspective on that?
Well, so one part of it is, are all of your body parts participating in the movement? Because what often happens is, no, they're not. You've got some parts that are kind of stuck and not participating, cooperating, and other parts that are doing more than their job.
Yes.
And if you're not able to, for example, move all the joints in your spine, but you still try to do some stretches or things like deep yoga poses, you might be exploiting the one or two joints that are able to bend, and then you overdo those, and you still haven't freed up the areas that are stiff.
Oh, that's so interesting. So, yeah, so learning how to use your body right can make those exercises start to work, but there's this before piece. I remember I had terrible back and sciatic pain for a long, long time, and I really wanted to walk, and so I did. But somebody told me, pay attention to where you're pulling your legs from, because I don't think it's where it should be. And when I did that, it was way up here. My leg movement was originating way up here, like, because something was locked in my hips, I think.
It's so interesting. Years ago, I decided I wanted to go jogging, right? Like make that a regular exercise. So I was, but the inside of my left knee was hurting. And I went to a training, a long weekend movement training. And I mentioned that to the trainer on the first day. I've been going jogging and my inside of my left knee. And she said, yeah, it's that thing you do with your neck. I'm like, what thing with my neck? So I didn't have a chance that day to find out more what she had observed with my neck that I didn't. But the next morning I went jogging, and because I didn't know what I was doing, I just kept wiggling my head around the whole time I jogged, and my knee didn't hurt. And so there was absolutely something that I had been doing with my neck that was creating a catch, right? Like things weren't moving through the whole system well. And the place that was ganging up was on the inside of my left knee. So I did play with it some more about what was my head position, so I didn't always have to, go jogging, moving my head constantly. But it was really interesting to me that moving my head constantly meant that at least I wasn't doing that thing anymore.
Okay. Yeah, right.
And
it interrupted that pattern that you had been in that was causing damage.
Right. And because I was constantly moving it, I wasn't settling into another bad pattern, right? It's not the outside hurts. I just stayed out of a fixed pattern. So I don't recommend that everybody jog, like a bobblehead. But I was so impressed that, first of all, that somebody else had seen that about me, that I was doing something with my neck that was likely to cause an imbalance in other places. Oh, I wasn't aware of that. And second, that she was right, because when I made changes in how I move my neck, the whole body was cooperating together for that challenge of jogging was different. And it was different in a way that did not concentrate force and inflammation and in one specific location. Things were better distributed.
Wow, it's making me think of that song, the hip bone's connected to the thigh bone. And it's like we don't go through life being super aware how we're sitting, how we're moving, etc. But these days that can be really troublesome as far as developing pain problems and
right. So I'd
structural
like to just share one practical thing with your viewers, right? So if you sit upright on your chair, so you're not leaning against the back and your spine can move, or you actually stand up, right, so that you're upright and you don't need to disturb where you are in position of the camera, but anybody who's watching or listening. And then if you let your arms hang down at your sides and just rotate them so that the palms face the wall behind you. I think what you find is that your shoulders have an inclination to come forward. When I go out in the wild, and I'm going to start posting these, so maybe people want to follow me. When I'm out in the wild, I like to take pictures of people in various states of really good upright posture or various kinds of collapse and humpback. And invariably, the people with really collapsed posture have the palms of their hands facing the world. And if you're doing this, besides bringing the shoulders forward, if you're standing up like I am, you'll feel that it kind of gives a general collapse and the legs become planted. It's harder to pick up the feet and walk. So if you've got a habit of internally rotating the arms, the palms and hands behind you, and somebody says, oh, it's a beautiful day, would you like to go for a walk? Your inclination is probably going to be say no, right? Because I'm good here, right? It's If you just rotate the arms so the palms face forward, I think you'll find that the front of the chest opens, the shoulders go back, and if you're standing up, the legs get lighter and easier to move. And so just something that simple.
Little
right?
things.
Little things. So I don't want people to come away from this thinking, oh, I have to do a bobblehead all the time. No, or oh, it'll be so long. I mean, there's a lot you can learn, but just a little bit will help. Now, you don't have to go all the way palms forward. That's just the far ends of the spectrum, so you can really experience it. Palms facing you, thumbs forward is enough. That'll let your arms swing, your feet, you'll be really good. But if your palms are facing
even your balance will be better just by changing the position of your arms.
Absolutely. Just by changing that, what you're doing with that is you're rotating the upper arm bone in the shoulder socket, so that internal rotation tends to invite the shoulder blade away from the spine, and it puts a spin this way on the collarbone, which pushes down on the sternum. You get kind of a domino effect. All that pushes down. And if you rotate, when you rotate the arm the other way, it encourages the shoulder blade to move a little bit closer to the spine and puts a spin this way on the collarbone, giving a little bit of a lift to the chest. And so just that little bit, right? It's like what you do with the first domino matters. Do you in a way that takes you into a collapse, or do you push it into a way that brings you upright and giving you a little bit of lightness?
So simple and so clear. You taught me that, and I was having neck pain, and it got me out of the neck pain. Just this simple, I just remind myself at my desk to turn my arms the other way, and it just opens me up. I think I even breathe better.
Yeah, because if your palms are rotated behind you and then you bring your hands up to the keyboard, now you're going to be sunken and and there's like no good will come of this.
Right.
But if you rotate palms forward, bend at the elbows, now your palms up, just turn over from the elbows. Now you're ready to type, your neck is free, your shoulders are free, your shoulders are going to stay more back, your chest will be more open, like everything works better. It's a little bit like drive your car with the parking brake on, or do you take that off?
That's so good. Yeah, that's a great analogy. Oh, I love it. So the source of our pain lots of times is something postural that we're doing habitually that is just causing certain stuckness. Right. So one thing I know is a lot of my friends are starting to have surgeries, hip surgeries and back surgeries and neck surgeries and shoulder surgeries, and it's scary to me because I worked in nursing homes, and some people ended up there because they had a surgery. You know, all those things we have to sign saying you could die, terrible things could happen. They actually happen sometimes, right? It's not completely benign to have surgery. So I really wanted to avoid it. And I want to understand, though, because my friends will say, but there's a structural thing they can see on X-ray. And therefore, the only fix for that is surgical. And I found that wasn't the case. I did have structural things wrong that seemed to, I don't know if they went away or that just the pain went away, the trouble from them went away.
So it's going to depend what it is. I had the great opportunity for years and years, from 2006 until 2020, when the pandemic clicked in, of teaching in-person classes. And for a lot of those years, I taught 12 classes a week, 100 different people. So I had the chance to see lots of different body types and histories and personalities. And I went to additional trainings kind of based on what interested me and what would be useful to this group of people that I was seeing so much. And one of them that I went to was designed by a physical therapist who's looking at, she says that just as there's a rotator cuff for the ball and socket of the shoulder, there is a rotator cuff team of muscles for the ball and socket of the hip.
Okay.
And that team gets dysregulated, you get into a lot of problems, including balance issues, walking issues, lots of things. But one of the things that this is coming back to your surgery question, one of the things that I learned from her is that organ prolapse affects a huge number of women. Like well over 50% of women who it's actually much higher than that, but I don't want to give a wrong statistic here. I'll look for it later. And she said that, for example, bladder suspension surgery, which is one surgical approach to that issue, and that would be something they could see on a scan, right? Your bladder is no longer where it belongs. So we're going to go in surgically and lift it up and put in a little mesh and hold it in place there. She said the good effects of that last a maximum of 5 years. So if you have that surgery in your 50s or 60s, you're going to need to have it again.
Over and over.
And you can only have it a maximum of 3 times. So the best option the surgeons can offer you is 15 years.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's a major surgery you need to recover from. So that's what was the impact on you of anesthesia. That's when they cut into the connective tissue that is your organ of shape and structure and holds you together, right? That's a disruption. And she said that you can reverse organ prolapse using movement, and it just takes a couple minutes a day of activities.
Wow. Yeah.
Actually had someone come for an individual session when I was teaching at a conference, and I got her set up on the table in the position to do the exercises that this PT recommends for reversing organ prolapse. And she said, everything's back where it belongs. That was just getting in the position. Now, she yet have the muscle team working together to hold it there when she stood up. But getting those organs back into place didn't require surgery. It required getting her into a position in relation to the line of gravity so that gravity could help invite everything back where it belonged. And then the process would be to do some movement activities to get that team working together to hold the organs where it belongs. That's no anesthesia. That's no cutting. That's something you can do for the rest of your life. And it's going to improve the side effects, right, of that is better balance, reduced pain, better standing, better walking, in addition to reversing prolapse.
Wow. Yeah. And I bet that doctors don't necessarily know this is possible because it's not how they're trained. They're trained to diagnose, look for medications, look for surgical solutions, not how to exercise or how to eat right, really.
Well, and I think it's good. This is where, it's your responsibility as somebody who has something not quite right to get information. You can't just outsource that and hand it over to somebody else. Doctors are a wonderful source of information and advice, and they're trained in a very narrow set of things. And many of them think they know everything, but they don't. They know a narrow set of things. So I'm very good at what I do. But if somebody tells me I'd like some help with nutrition, I say, well, you need to talk to Ginny because I didn't do research on that, right? Like, I'm very good at what I do, but I don't know everything. And I know I don't know everything. Right. So, well, then you go and talk to somebody who knows that. And so if you've got some issues, I think you really need to get second, third opinions from people who are in different fields, not just.
That's a good point.
Right. But what about somebody who comes at this from an entirely different perspective?
Right.
Now, you might have gotten to a point where surgery is necessary because there's been so much degradation, but that doesn't mean that you're off the hook for learning about movement. So one of my trainers had a student who'd had hip replacement surgery. So for hip replacement surgery, what they do is actually cut off the top of the leg bone and put in a titanium ball. It kind of looks like a tent stake, and it sticks down into the leg. Okay?
Yeah.
But nobody gave him any training about changing his posture. And so he went back to his hip forward posture when he got out of surgery. Do you know he actually forced that titanium tent stake out through the front of his thigh bone? So he had to have the same hip replaced a second time because he'd now done further damage to the bone of his leg. So you might have let things go to a point where surgery is going to be beneficial to you. And if you rely on only the surgery, like same thing, like for bunions, for all kinds of things that people will, what caused you to need that surgery in the first place? And if you haven't solved the issue that made that be a good idea, you might be looking at having that again. But you know, scar tissue accumulates and builds up, and the effects of anesthesia and the effects of cutting into that connective tissue, it's like a web of bubble wrap all around everything that holds things in place, so that when you jump up and down, right, you don't shuffle your abdominal organs. They all end up in the same place relative to each other. That's your connective tissue doing that. So if you go in and disrupt the integrity of that connective tissue, you can run into problems with accessing muscle later, with having stability. So surgery is sometimes a good answer to where you've gotten with that situation. I always make it one of the later options to try, because you can't say, okay, well then let's just delete that, right, and start over. Now you're going to be starting over with scar tissue, the effects of anesthesia, disrupted connective tissue. So you try the other things first, and hopefully you started noticing, like I did, oh, when I go jogging, the inside of my knee hurts. I want to do something different. You don't want to just keep jogging on a knee that hurts.
Well, and that makes me think it helps to have somebody who knows what they're looking at, observing you, because we don't know. We don't know how all those things connect. And it was hard for me to notice I was pulling my legs forward with my upper back. Like, how are we supposed to recognize that's not right? Something's wrong.
It's also an analogy I've heard that I love is if you're sitting on the inside of the jar, it's hard for you to read the label, right? Because the label is intended to be outside.
That's a great analogy.
And so for some of these things, you know, you have the experience of being on the inside. Absolutely. And different things can be seen from the outside, especially by somebody who's trained to observe.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it'd be good if you talked about how you help people with the living pain-free. And are there like fundamental principles here that you're following?
Yes. So first of all, thank you very much for having this conversation and for allowing me to make that free sampler available, which is pain-free work day. And so if anybody's curious, especially if somebody's had trouble for a while, because I know this, right? I got into all this work because I was in, I was on a bus. I was 21 and working in a big city, and I was going home from work, and I chose a spot behind the second door of the bus because it was up high and I could look out at the city. And the bus driver stopped suddenly, and there was a bar in front of me, but no vertical plate. So I shot off the seat, under the bar, and down the steps. And I low back and neck pain for 10 years, right? So that was like I was doing, I could say I was doing everything right. So sometimes things, you know, just happen. And then I had low back and neck pain for 10 years. And I saw all the rounds of health professionals, doctors, chiropractors, PTs, massage, acupuncture. I just did everything. And it was learning how to move differently, how to work with my body was what took me out of pain. And so what I know from having had pain for 10 years is people can tell you, oh, this is great, it helps everybody. And you go, yeah, well, will it help me or not? So in this sampler is there are 5 3-minute videos that teach a little something, and it's something practical that you can do at your workstation. So what's the, you know, about how you're setting up your keyboard and your mouse, and about how you're arranging your body while you're working. And so that gives you an opportunity to try a little something and see how your body responds. And if you don't like it, then you didn't waste any money and you go on and look for something else. And
Well, knowing you, those little 3-minute videos are going to change people's lives. Yeah. For me, just starting to understand that, pills and surgeries are not going to be the best solution, and I need to learn to use my body differently and pay a little more attention, was massive, right? Yeah. When I went to the doctor at first with the back pain issues at 20 years old, it's like, we're going to put you on Valium. Yeah. And I asked him, is this addictive? And he said, no, which is not true. Valium's definitely addictive. And I asked him, is it going to interfere with I was a music major at the time. I was needing to be in a practice room 6 hours a day. Is it going to interfere with my schoolwork? And he said, no. And it totally did. Yeah. It totally interfered with all kinds of things. Later, it was more ibuprofen, but it was every day. And I started, as I studied that, it's like, this is not doing good things in my body either.
No, and that's also where I'm interested in is, okay, are you managing discomfort or are you resolving the root of the issue?
Ooh, yeah.
Because all of those management techniques cost, right? Like, okay, they cost money to get the pills, but they also have side effects that you need to manage.
Yes.
They're also disruptive in other ways. I
Yes.
heard somebody describe it as, she said, well, look, pills have effects, and
Right.
the effects we call benefits, and the effects we
Right.
call side effects. But they have an array of effects on the body.
Right.
And you're not having pain because you are deficient in medicines that cause effects. You're pain because there's a lack of harmony somewhere.
Right.
And it could be a sudden disruption like I had shooting down those stairs, but it could also be, like you carrying a drum set that's too heavy for you. And then how did you compensate in order to manage that? And then those compensations can become a new source of trouble, right?
Right.
So for example, if you step on a piece of glass or a staple in your foot, now you're going to limp while your foot is healing. Totally legit.
Right.
But what if you develop a habit of limping over the
Right.
time that your foot is healing, and then your foot is healed, but now you have a habit of limping? Well, that's going to cause troubles for your hips, for your back.
Locks things up, right? Yeah.
Like you're not having easy movement that just ripples through the whole body.
Right.
So then it's interesting to find out, well, where are the places that got a little sticky?
Mm-hmm.
Also, where are the places that you didn't get back into trusting again, right?
Right.
So it's healed, but you don't quite trust it to bear all your weight. And so then you spend more time with weight on the other foot, and now that leg and knee and hip are complaining. So you want to come back into using your whole self in a balanced way.
Yeah. I had a fall right on my heel really hard a couple of years ago, and the guy that was painting my house said, "You're limping." I said, "I know, I fell hard on my..." He said, "Yeah, but you're going to limp the rest of your life if you don't get out of this habit." And I remembered, okay, I need to get back into balance and how I'm using my body again, because naturally we protect the area that has pain, but then, everything starts to tighten into a different weirdo position that's not going to serve you.
Right. And the way out of that, can be very friendly, right? It doesn't have to be, okay, now you make yourself do things. So for example, one thing that you could do is lying on your back, put your feet on the wall and do kind of a walking pattern on the wall, the right foot and the left foot, and feel the pressure travel through your legs, your pelvis, your spine, up to your head. And you just sort of remind your nervous system that that foot is part of the whole team, right? There's a relationship between that foot and your head.
Yeah.
And you don't have to risk falling over. You don't have to risk pain. You've got your foot on the wall, so you're not managing the whole weight of your body, but you could have your feet equally taking turns.
Yeah.
and just sort of remind yourself, oh yeah, this foot equally has a relationship. Pressure travels from that foot everywhere else too. And you just start bringing a sense back in of, oh right, this foot is still part of the team.
Yeah,
Or
I
is
love
a
that.
fully participating part of the team again. So
Yeah,
there can be very gentle and friendly ways that you
that's a
go
good
about
point. Because a lot of us went to physical therapy and we were being pulled and jerked into position. And a lot of us end up feeling like I either need surgery or medication or somebody to pull my body and push it into the right place. And exercises seem like, well, how's that supposed to work? Right?
I think there's also a big idea that you need willpower to force your way through. But so see if this analogy works. Would you like to have a car that requires more or less gasoline to travel the same distance?
Probably less.
Probably less. So
Yeah.
would you like it to require more or less effort for you to get through your day?
Less.
Less, right? And you don't have to be so tired. You can do more
Right.
things, enjoy them. So that forcing yourself using effort is going to be necessary when you've got inefficient patterns. Right? Things were more efficient, they would take less effort.
Oh, that's so good. So we can end up tired, not functioning very well, not feeling very well, and worn out from pain and from things that are stuck in our body. And probably we start to get more protective and less likely to want to do things. I understand that just going for a walk is something our brain really needs. It really needs us moving through space to be doing well. And we all want our brains to do well.
So that it's, I love that you made this connection. So there are games on the phone and whatnot that try to sell you on the idea that doing crossword puzzles is going to keep your brain alert and active. But what
Right.
really keeps your brain alert is movement.
Yeah.
Especially new, unusual movements, because your brain has to figure out how to communicate with different parts of your body. And there's nothing survival related about crossword puzzles, but there absolutely is something survival related about being able to stand up, being able to go for a walk. And your nervous system understands and really puts a value on that.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And there's there's an organism in the sea, the sea squirt, Acidaceae. I'll put the spelling in later. And it spends its young life like a tadpole swimming around, and it has a brain and the beginnings of a spinal cord so that it can sense and move. You only need a brain for movement. The sea squirt, when it is going into its mature phase, it has kind of taken stock of the environment. Where are the currents? Where are the rocks? Where's the light? It picks the spot and attaches itself to the rock and dissolves its brain because it spends its adult life as a plant.
Oh my God.
For moving around. And so it spends the rest of its life fixed to the rock, and it filters seawater in and out and gets nutrients. And so it really lives as a little plant. It's called a sea squirt because it pulls the water in and pushes it out.
Oh, that's so interesting. It reminds me, having run a Montessori school, of like how we learned that movement is so critical to learning. And we sort of set up our whole school system so that children don't get to move while they're learning. And that's really, really detrimental to their learning. They can't do it. They can't just sit still and learn, a lot of them.
You know, one of the other two, I'd be very interested for somebody to do a study on this, but one of the things I enjoy as a hobby is dance, and one form is contra dance. And I've had some of my own health issues so that my stamina goes up and down. And so I was part of the contra dance community in my area for a few years. And then I was dealing a little more with fatigue, and the idea of getting out in the heat and moving around for a couple hours wasn't so appealing. So I was away for a few years. And when I went back, I noticed that the people that had their butts out behind them in good upright posture still did. And the people who used to have a little bit of a collapse were significantly more collapsed.
Wow. Yeah.
Striking how much they'd collapsed over those years. But because we're talking about brains, the thing that was also very interesting is that some of the new dancers that have been coming in were changing up the calls. They didn't so much like it to be gents and ladies, so they were using gender neutral larks and ravens, and they were more likely to switch who was doing the gents role, who was doing the lady. Sometimes have two women, more often have two women dance together, or two men, or just take turns, like just swap over the course of one, who was the lead, who was the follow. And what I also noticed was the people who had good upright posture were light on their feet, easy to move around, and they didn't seem to have trouble with the calls changing, and they didn't seem to have trouble with people playing differently in the line.
Yeah.
Who were collapsed were not only more stuck in their feet, they also were grumpy and resentful about changes that were happening.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I actually started using it as a way of filtering out, because not everybody who wanted things to be the old way was grumpy and miserable, but all of the bad dance partners that I had were that. And so I just started, when somebody asked me if I wanted to dance, I would say, well, yes, and I prefer to dance switch. Is that okay with you? And if they said no, I'd say, well, fine, then go find another partner.
Yeah, right. Wow.
And so it just was a way for me to filter for people who were more cheerful and more able to spontaneously negotiate. Like, we did the dance together instead of this is what you're supposed to do and this is what I'm supposed to do, and we just do that thing, right? And I just found it so interesting how connected posture, being light on your feet, is to being open to new ideas, new ways of doing things, and negotiating in quick, friendly ways with the people around you.
Right. Wow, that's so interesting. I always think when we talk how much eating affects so many things people don't think, like our mood, our irritability, our flexible thinking, all these things that are really affected, our pain and inflammation. And same thing, it's like with what you teach, I feel like these natural ways of living as well as possible, as naturally as possible, like finding the way, it's like finding the way to live as naturally as possible, as naturally pain-free, etc., is not something that just happens by accident in a way.
Well, and also one thing that I became very aware of in going through your program was, okay, you need to be deliberate about making your food choices and not just eat what everybody's eating, because the food culture around us is deranged.
Because of that, yes.
And the same thing is really true for posture and movement, because your mirror neurons kick in and you will begin to automatically imitate and kind of go in resonance with others around you. But if you take a look, you'll notice that a lot of the others are pretty slumpy and collapsed. And if you take a look in a shopping mall, most of the mannequins are really, they would not stand up on their own if they weren't, really stuck into a base in the floor.
Into a pole, really.
Very much, they're up on their toes and they've got their hips way forward. They're not lining up with that.
Oh, wow.
Right. And if you look at people in traditional cultures where they don't have, it's harder to find now, but where they don't have, cars and computers and
things that have us like this all day.
Well, but also, if you're doing, say, farm work, probably there's some weight to it. So you need to actually use your body efficiently, or you get worn out or injured very quickly. Right. And there's also probably something rhythmical to that work. So it's easier for you to find your way into, how you're using the pitchfork or whatever the tool is, so that you're just managing your body better. You're riding a horse instead of a car. You're gonna be more comfortable and functional if your pelvis and low back are in a good shape to support than being slumpy. So if you look at folks in those cultures, they tend to be much more upright. Yeah. And if you look at folks in the big cities, they'll tend to have various ways of draping themselves around the line of gravity, but not actually.
Oh, wow. Wow. So what would you tell people who want to understand how to live more in balance with their body? I mean, one message I'm getting from you is it doesn't have to be hard. It just takes like intention and awareness and maybe support from somebody who can see what you're doing and guide you.
So I think this is one of the reasons I love I love being in connection with you is I think that you can try a lot of different things with food, or you can do Ginny's program and save a lot of time because she's already mapped things out. And one thing you can do with movement is just simply try variations, right? If you sit in several different ways and you notice, what's my breathing like? What's my muscle tension like? Like how much work is it for me to stay up here? You can do a lot just if you start paying attention and play with variations.
Oh,
and
I love that.
if you want to go faster, then you get somebody like me to give you some of the shortcuts. Well, how about if you do this and this and this? Oh, how do you feel, right? Like we might, because otherwise, if you try to figure out your own diet, there's so much misinformation. You can try lots of things that don't work. So
For a long, long time.
a long time. So I can give you some quick tips that will be guiding you more in that direction of better balance. And then it's still going to be up to you as the one who's on the inside to say, oh yeah, this is working for me, or this works better for me than this other one, or well, what things am I going to integrate into my daily activities and use together?
I think you're just such a resource. I know I've used physical therapy in the past and chiropractor. I have had pain for a long, long time, right? And so many things got better. But now knowing somebody who can quickly give me some, like, I don't have to say very much and you know what will help me. And it isn't hard.
Well, so what I'd like to say too is that I've got a workshop coming up on September 9th and 10th, right? Love your hips. And the hips are just foundational because the whole weight of your torso, your head, anything in your shoulder bag is resting on these highly mobile ball and socket joints of the hips. And so any imbalance in muscle length and tone in here can result in gripping tension patterns in other places. You're trying to stay up because you're not balanced in this area. Now, I had a woman come to the workshop last spring, and she said she was just astonished because she lives in Europe now, she'd had severe back pain and had gone into some sports medicine doctors, she'd really had some intensive help. They'd given her a lot of exercises. She'd done a lot of things in the office. And she said, nobody told her any of the practical day-to-day things that she could implement. And I gave her a whole bunch in that one workshop. And so some of it is, you can make time at the gym, you can go for walks, all that. But how are you using your body when you wash dishes, when you brush your teeth, when you sit at your desk, when you sit and watch TV? So all those, where are you actually spending most of your life? What's your body position like when you're sleeping? And so those are where I really love to get in and say, well, what if you just did a little change here, something you're already doing every day? So it's not carving another half hour out of every day.
Right.
But what if you just paid attention to your knee-toe alignment when you go up and down the stairs? What if you make sure that your chair is a good height when you sit at your computer desk? What if you get your keyboard at a good height and angle so you're not wrecking your wrists when you type, right? There are lots of these little things. And that's where I really love. That's why the pain-free workday as the free sampler. And then those are the kinds of things that I like to share in the workshops.
Nice. Do people know when they have trouble with their hips, or is it showing up other places?
So, well, I love that you're a musician. So the hips are just really foundational because the whole upper body rests on the hips.
Yeah.
You won't necessarily feel pain in the hips. Some people do, but if you've got things out of balance in the hips, it could be showing up as neck tension. It could be showing up as knee pain. It could be showing up in your feet and ankles. Right. The place that needs addressing first could very well be the hips.
Right.
Because the hips are such big joints and you've got such big muscles around them, it might be that you don't experience the pain there. One of my first yoga mentors, she said there was a time she was following basketball and the basketball players all had tight hips. And they started, because the ankles are a more delicate joint than the hips, they started getting ankle troubles.
Right.
So the league put them in high top shoes to give them more stability for their ankles. So then they started having knee troubles.
Oh, yeah.
So the place that was tight and uncooperative was the hips. And it's
Right.
not infinite flexibility will solve anything, because there's a big overlap between hypermobile people and people in chronic pain. So you don't
Okay.
necessarily want to get more flexible, but you want to have a good, healthy range of motion, and you want the effort to be distributed evenly.
Mm-hmm.
And if your hips are part of the problem, you might or might not feel the discomfort in the hips right away. It could be that some other part of the body is sort of on the receiving end of the unbalanced force.
Right. So how do people know if they will benefit from this workshop? I think I had sciatic pain that was like I had to really free up my hips to be able to get that to go away.
Yeah. So, I mean, hips are just foundational. Really, everybody would benefit from the hips workshop just because everybody is a central thing. But how you would know? I guess if you've got some things that you've been trying to address other ways and they haven't really, if the other things that you're trying, especially like targeting your knees or your ankles or your low back, if those haven't been working for you, then you might say, I wonder.
Might be my hips.
I wonder if culprit is somewhere else. And so then the question, right? Well, how can the problem happen somewhere else? So one thing I like to talk about is shear force. So if I put my fingers right next to each other on this paper and press really hard, is fine. The paper is totally fine, right? It's just like it was before. And so if your joints are lined up, then the force goes through the middle of the joint and you're just fine. And if I put my fingers next to each other, right, not right against each other, and I push, now I'm going to create a tear. And that's how you get shear. So it's not a question of, oh, I used myself too much, or I picked up something that was too heavy. You had your joints not aligned. And so then instead of the force going through the middle of the bone, the middle of the joint, the middle of the neck, it went through the soft tissue that's supposed to be giving boundary to the joint, but it's not supposed to be really taking the force. Now you get a tear. Now what are you going to do? Right.
Yeah.
So learning some how to organize yourself so that, and I taught a knee workshop in July, and that was nice because I spent the week prepping for it and creating slides to give good visuals. And then I taught it on Saturday. And then Sunday, I went for a walk in the park, about a mile and a half. And I just felt really good because it was a nice day. It was nice to be out. I was moving well, but also I was even more conscious than usual of how my knees and toes were lining up. And it just made, oh, yes, I'm
really, wow.
I'm feeling very sure-footed, and I'm just confident I'm not creating any new problems for myself being out here today. It was that sort of
nice,
enjoying myself, and I don't have to pay for this later.
Right. I love that. I hear that from people with their eating. It's like, I love eating this way, and I know I'm giving my body the best chance to feel really well, like years and years down the road. I think we all want to live those later years feeling good still and not going to more and more doctor's appointments and more medications, et cetera. And I feel like that's the kind of thing that you help with.
Well, and I think too, as one musician to another, the body likes rhythm. And one thing I loved as I got into the program of eating in the way that you're recommending is that it was rhythmical. There were times that I eat, and then there are times that I don't eat. I wasn't just snacking all day long, right? So I eat, and it wasn't like I was using willpower to keep myself out of the kitchen. It was like I got what I needed during that, so that I wasn't having a sugar crash. I wasn't hungry. I was just able to not think about food and go do other things. Yeah. And what I find with working with the body is it's very nice to do things rhythmically. And so I have been getting out in the morning for a half hour. I get up and I go to the bathroom and I drink some water. And then I go for about a half hour walk in the neighborhood. And then I come back and have breakfast. And I usually try to go for about a 10-minute walk after every meal and just
wow, nice.
And then some days I don't go for a walk because timing, the weather, whatever. But then it's easy to get back in because I'm just sort of in the rhythm of going for a walk in the morning. So you can be playing a piece of music and hit a regular beat and then have a measure or two where you don't, and then you just come right back in with that, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have
Something in you kept going in that rhythm.
And so even though I might have a day or two where I don't go for a walk in the morning, the third day I might wake up and say, oh, right, I feel like going for my morning walk. And it doesn't have to be, I didn't do it the last couple of days. It's just, oh, today I'm ready to get back into that rhythm again and go for my walk.
It makes me think that a lot of that frustrated, oh shoot, I got to do something healthy now, energy it's not a normal human energy. It's something that's happening in our current environment because we're not eating well, we're not moving well, and we just don't feel like we want to do anything. We just feel like everything's irritating.
You only need force when it's inefficient, what you're trying to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And you're only going to need willpower when you don't have the ability to do something in a light, easy, skillful way.
Oh, that's so good.
And so for me, when I go for a walk, I'm not interested in counting my steps. I'm not interested in counting the minutes. I'm not interested in my heart rate. I'm interested in the quality of my walk. Do I have a nice, springy gait? And if the quality of my gait is good, then it's a pleasure to be out walking. I have a kind of loop in the neighborhood that I usually do that takes me about half an hour. But if I get interested in something and slow down, I don't get disappointed that I didn't, beat the stopwatch back. I don't. I'm interested in what's the quality of my movement out, and if the quality is good, it's actually enjoyable to be out doing.
Yes, and it makes me think it's such a feminine energy, instead of doing exercise or eating in some kind of competitive, I got to win this game kind of way. It's like, how do I live the richest life for as long as possible? Yeah, we got to reclaim that. I love it. You have any other closing words about
I
how
just want
people
to
can
say
live
that
pain-free?
there's so much about no pain, no gain, and you got to push yourself. And especially for women who are maybe menopause or older, which I include myself in now too, doing exercise that raises your cortisol levels is not going to set you up for anything good. And so going for a nice moderate walk might be better for you than high intensity interval training. So notice when it's absolutely fine to try different things, but notice when you try something, does it give you a sense of being alive and delighted, or does it give you a sense of, oh, I hate this and now I need to recover?
Right.
How much of your life do you want to spend doing things that you hate?
And it's the same with eating. Can I eat in a way that makes me feel alive and delighted?
Well, that was what I found when I was eating with your program, and then I would go out occasionally for a lunch, and I felt like, well, that restaurant meal just stole my peace of mind all afternoon. All I could think about was how I wanted to eat something, or
it's cravings going.
It set off cravings for something. I was like, you know what? I much prefer an eating plan that lets me enjoy my meal and then have peace of mind in between meals and not be fighting cravings. How crazy is that?
I love it.
I just encourage folks. When the pandemic first started, I switched from teaching in person and walking around rooms and being up and down to being in front of a computer, and it was exhausting and tiring, and I was uncomfortable. And so then I reconfigured my workstation, and now I don't get tired working at my computer. And so there are ways that you can work even with the devices of the modern day that are still respectful of your own body, your own tissues, your own nervous system, so that you're not wearing yourself out. I'd encourage you to play with variations, to look for those, with those as a goal, right? What you're looking for. And if you'd like some help, Pain-Free Workday is free sampler of activities. And the Love Your Hips workshop is coming up September 9th and 10th, and I'll get you a link for that as well.
Yeah. Is there an easy link to tell people to go to artofmovingwell.com?
artofmovingwell.com/workshops is the page where that is. And then I'll put the link that goes right into the registration page too.
Yeah, because some people might watch this 3 months from now.
Yeah. And so the workshops page will be getting updated. So if
Yeah,
they
it'll
want
keep
to 3 months from now, it might not be the hips workshop. I've got one for the neck and shoulders and one for the low
Right.
back, one for the knees. But if you go to that artofmovingwell.com/workshops, that will help you find what's the current workshop.
Yay. And if people wanted to ask, how can I work with you? They could go to artofmovingwell.com.
Yes, and there are buttons on several of the pages to schedule a free 20-minute chat over
Oh,
coffee. So we can
I
just,
so recommend it.
yes. So it's called A Chat with Charlie and Me. So we will be happy to hear about what's going on with you and see what we can recommend, which might or might not be my services. It might be that you need to talk to Ginny, or you
Right.
might, maybe it's a book or somebody else. But we'll be happy to listen to you and see what we see from our position on the outside of your jar. What might be a good
Nice.
next step for you.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing your expertise. I love that it feels like it's not going to be hard. It's going to be actually energizing.
And that can start right away, right?
Right
Like it's that
away.
first domino. Are you like things can keep improving, but as long as you're not pushing the first domino over into a way of stress and tension and fatigue, then things can get better
Yes,
right
absolutely.
away. You can start feeling improvements right away.
Right away. Yeah. Thank you so much, Paula. I really appreciate it. People will love the workshop. Go to the workshop.
Thank you. Thank you, Ginny.
All right. Thank you. See you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.